Okay, so today I am going to be talking you through picking up solo and ensemble events as a musician. These events are going to start coming in at a really high volume during our solo and ensemble season, so you'll want to know how to find all of the necessary information on these events so that you can start to accept them. Solo and ensemble events are a little bit less straightforward than our usual events. Usually you can just look at the scheduling section and know exactly what the calls are, but for solo and ensemble, not all of the required calls are going to be listed in the scheduling section. The reason that not all of the calls are listed is because there's actually significantly more flexibility with these calls. So you're going to be able to choose which of the rehearsal options that we have is going to work best for your schedule. But because of that, you're also going to need to understand how to know what the options are, how to indicate which option that you'd like to choose, that sort of a thing. So here I am logged into my musician profile at www.trekorda.com, and I am on my home page here. So when you're invited to a solo and ensemble event, it's going to show up in your invited events section just like it would any other event. And you can go ahead and click on that to open it up, and it's going to pull up something like this. So if you take a look at the musician notes, all of the solo and ensemble events will have this little blurb that's kind of just a summary of the things that I'm going to go into in more depth. So once I talk you through all the different steps to accepting a solo and ensemble event, we'll come back to the musician notes as a sort of a recap. And that can always be a sort of refresher for you to remember, oh yeah, this is what I need to do in order to accept a solo and ensemble event. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is take a look down here at the scheduling section. If you will notice, the performance date is the only call that is listed in the scheduling section. However, it is not the only call that is required for a solo and ensemble event. So usually how solo and ensemble works is that each student is going to have 2 rehearsals in the 2 weeks leading up to their contest day. And so they're going to have 1 rehearsal per week, and then they'll have the contest. The reason that the rehearsals aren't listed here in the scheduling section is because there's going to be options for those. So once you take a look at the options, you're going to pick whatever works best for you and your schedule. But before we get into the depths of picking out the rehearsal options, all of that sort of a thing, you first need to make sure that you are available for the performance day, which will be listed in the scheduling section. If you'll notice, the time range is listed as 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. That's because when we get solo and ensemble events, we won't know the exact performance times until later, so you will need to be available for the entirety of the day in order to accept this event. However, as we get closer to the performance date and we get the specifics of the time, you won't actually need to be there the entire day. You'll just need to be there when your students are performing. But upon accepting the event, it's most likely going to be a time range listed because we won't have that information yet, so you do need to be available the entire day. Once you've confirmed your availability for the performance day, then you can go up to the web links section to access the student information sheet. And this is going to be where we find our rehearsal options. This is what you're going to look at to determine when you would like to come in to do those 2 rehearsals per student. Okay, so when you click on the student information sheet, it's going to pull up something that looks like this. I know this looks like a ton of information, but once you get the hang of it, it is going to be okay. It's not so bad. So it's going to open up to the Solo and Ensemble Master List tab. As a pianist, you really do not need to worry about this tab at all. This is more for the Trekorda team. And so what you actually need to pay attention to are these tabs here at the bottom labeled Accompanist 1, Accompanist 2, Accompanist 3, Accompanist 4. These are the accompanist positions that you're going to be able to pick from for this event. So the number of tabs here at the bottom is the number of accompanists that are needed for this event. Usually there's between 1 and 4 accompanist positions, but it kind of just varies depending on the student number. If it says open, that means the spot is open and you can take a look at this tab to see if this is an accompanist slot that you would like to fill. So when you do click on a tab that says open, you want to double check that it also says open here at the top of the screen as well. every once in a while, pianists will fill out their name at the top of this tab when they're picking their rehearsal options, and they won't fill it out down here. So just to verify that the position is actually open, you want to make sure it says open down here with the tab, and you also want to make sure it says open up here at the top in column J. Okay, so there's a couple sections on each of these accompanist tabs that you're going to want to look at. Over here on the left is the student list. So you can see how many students are assigned to this accompanist. So if you were to accept the accompanist 1 position, you would be playing for these 29 students, right? And you can also see the repertoire that they're going to be playing, their instrumentation, that sort of a thing. So this is another thing that you're going to want to take a look at before you accept an accompanist position. You want to make sure the number of students and the repertoire is doable, right? So once you've determined this looks like something that you can do, feeling good about it, you go over here to the right, and this is where we see the rehearsal options. What you want to look at primarily is this note section down here in yellow. This is going to have the instructions on how you can fill out the above sections depending on which of the scheduling options that you'd like to pick. All the information that you need is in this little note section, and then if you'll notice, the rehearsal options here are split into week 1 and week 2. So you'll be picking an option for week 1, and you'll also be picking an option for week 2, depending on the instructions in the notes. Okay, so I'm going to talk us through each of the accompanist tabs here just because they all have slightly different examples of things that you might actually see when you get solo and ensemble events sent to you. So we're going to go ahead and start with this accompanist 1 tab that we are already in. This one is a little bit more complex just because it has option A and option B choices listed here, but I will get into the details of that momentarily. So if we look down at the notes, which are where we go to understand what is listed above, it says you will need to come in 2 days each week. So as I had mentioned earlier, each student gets 1 rehearsal per week in the 2 weeks leading up to the contest. So in some cases, you're able to play for all of your students in 1 day, in which case you only need to come in once a week. But in some cases, the scheduling doesn't work out that way, and so in order to cover every student just once, you have to come in 2 separate days so that you can get to everybody. So this is one of those times when you're going to have to come in 2 days each week, meaning you will have a total of 4 rehearsal dates. So if we continue on here, it says Thursday rehearsals in red are required each week. So that means up here, Thursday the 13th of April and then Thursday the 20th of April, these times and these dates are required, right? So you have to be available on these dates at these times in order to accept this accompanist position. You will need to choose either option A or option B for the remaining rehearsal day. Options do not need to correspond week to week. For example, you can choose option A for week 1 and option B for week 2, vice versa, or the same option for both weeks. Date options are listed above. Please delete the dates and options that you do not want. Okay, so when we're looking at the rehearsal options up here, what the notes have said is that the Thursday is required, but each week we get to choose whether we want to come in Friday at these times or Wednesday at these times in order to complete the rehearsals for the week. So essentially what you would do is, after determining that you are available on these Thursdays, you're going to look at your schedule and see which of these options, if any of them, are best for your schedule. So hypothetically, if I were to end up accepting this position, what you would want to do is write your name here in the tab where it says open. You delete the word open, you put your name, and you also put your name up at the top here. You delete the word open, put your name, and that's when you would start filling out the rehearsal options to demonstrate when you're coming in to cover these rehearsals, right? So hypothetically, maybe Wednesday on the first week is better for my schedule. So to notate that, I'm going to delete these Friday dates. like it said down here, delete the date options that you do not want, right? And then maybe since the options don't need to go together, as it said down here as well, just because I chose option B for week 1, I could still choose option A for week 2 if that's what was better for me. So maybe Friday the following week is a better day for my rehearsals. So I'm going to delete these Wednesday rehearsals because this is not the rehearsals that I want to do. So essentially what you have just demonstrated to us is, one, that you are going to accept the accompanist 1 position, right? And you've also shown that you're coming in Thursday the 13th and Wednesday the 12th at these times for the first week of rehearsals. And then for the second week of rehearsals, you're coming in Thursday at these times and Friday at these times. One more thing that I do want to make clear while I'm on the Accompanist 1 tab still is, hypothetically, if you were looking at this event, you would want to click through all of the open Accompanist tabs just to see which of the student lists and rehearsal schedules together make the most sense for you. So in this scenario, we'll just pretend that I already looked through Accompanists 2, 3, and 4 and decided, okay, Accompanist 1 is the one that makes the most sense for me. So that's why I filled out my name down here, and I also filled out my name up top here as well. There is one more thing that you need to do in order to secure this event, which is you need to go back to the website and you need to accept the event on the website too. That is how you secure a solo and ensemble event. You cannot just fill out the spreadsheet. You need to make sure after you've filled out your information on the spreadsheet, as it says in the notes here, remember to accept the event on the website too. So you go back to the website, you click accept. That is how you secure a solo and ensemble event. So this is Accompanist 2. It's a little bit simpler just because it doesn't have the option A, option B stuff. But again, so when you open the different accompanist tabs, you're going to want to take a look first at the student list here. So you can see how many students this accompanist has. This one has 30 that they're playing for. Then you can also see the repertoire that this position entails. Once you've determined that this is doable, then you will go over to the rehearsal options on the right side and see if the scheduling works for you as well. So this one says you want to look at the note section first. The note section is always going to tell you exactly what to do. You will need to fill in a date for all 6 time slots. Date options for rehearsal 1 are 4/16, 4/18, 4/19. Date options for rehearsal 2 are 4/26, 4/27, 4/28. So if you look up here again, we're split into rehearsal 1 up top and rehearsal 2 down here. And this time, instead of coming in twice a week, it looks like you can cover all of your students in just one day because none of these time slots are overlapping, right? If you wanted, hypothetically, if it was better for your schedule, you could split these different time slots across some of the different date options. But again, that's not required. You can cover everybody in just one day. So hypothetically, again, I've looked at all of the open accompanist positions. I've determined that accompanist 2 is the one that's going to work best for me. Once I have done so, I will put my name. I'm going to put Katie's name. And I'm going to put my name again at the top. And then I'm going to fill in my rehearsal preferences. So for the Accompanist 1 tab, you had to delete the dates that you didn't want. For this Accompanist 2 tab example, you have to fill in the dates that you do want. So let's say, for example, the first rehearsal, I want to come in on the 16th for each time slot, right? Because the 16th is one of the rehearsal 1 options. But maybe, for example, for the second rehearsal, I am available in the morning on 4/26, so I'll do that. But I'm not available in the afternoon or the evening on that day, so instead I'd come in on 4/28 for the remaining 2 time slots. Again, once I have decided on my accompanist position, I've put my name at the bottom and at the top of the sheet, and I have filled in my rehearsal options. I would then go to the website and accept the event there. Alright, so I'm going to take you through the Accompanist 3 tab now as well, just for another example. Again, you know the drill, you want to look over here at the student list. So this accompanist position, there are only 22 students as opposed to the last one I think had 30. However, if you will notice, this accompanist position also entails saxophone repertoire, which I know is known to be more difficult than some of the other repertoire. So when you look at the student number, that's great to have as a frame of reference, but you also want to make sure that you take a look at the repertoire itself as well. Okay, so I've taken a look, I've determined this is going to be good for me. Now I'm going to go over to the rehearsal options to see what's going on with that. So again, I want to look at the notes section first. It says you will need to fill in dates for all times listed for rehearsal 1 and 2. Delete the dates you do not want. Okay, great. So this is very similar to the Accompanist 2 position as well. The only thing that is a little bit different is instead of filling in the dates ourselves, we're going to be just deleting the dates that we don't want. Leaving only the date that you're choosing. So maybe this first rehearsal, the 14th, is what's best for me. So I'm deleting all of these other dates that are not the 14th to show that this is when I'm coming in, the 14th of April. Great. And then again, hypothetically, if you wanted to, because none of these time slots are overlapping, you could either cover everything in one day, or if it makes more sense with your schedule to split up when you're coming in, that is fine as well, as long as you cover all 3 of these time slots. But in this example, I'm just going to come in all on the same day. So maybe the 23rd is what makes sense for my schedule. So that's what I'm going to fill in. I also need to make sure that I fill in my name at the top. I'll do Jessie this time. And also down here on the tab. And finally, once I have done so, I have filled out my rehearsals on the student information spreadsheet. I will go back to the event and I will accept it on the website as well. Okay, so the final Accompanist 4 position example here. So again, we're looking at the student list. This one has more students, 28 students, but maybe the repertoire is a little bit easier. I've decided that this looks good on my end, so I'm going to go ahead and look at the rehearsal options. This one is going to be very similar to Accompanist 2 and 3 options. The only thing that's a little bit different is that you have to come in 2 days a week to cover everybody instead of just 1 day. So the way that I can tell that right off the bat just by looking at this is that we always leave a space here if multiple days are necessary, right? So this grouping can be covered in 1 day, and then there's a gap, and then this grouping can be covered in 1 day, but because they're not all listed consecutively, that means that it can't just be covered in 1 day, right? And the reason for this is that the time slots, 10:35 to 12:05, are repeated down here. They're the same time slots, so you couldn't be covering everything in 1 day, if that makes sense. Okay, so we're looking at the notes. It says, pianist, please choose 2 dates for each week of rehearsals, right? That's what we just talked about. The 4 dates that you choose must include at least 2 bolded dates, 1 per week. So then we have week 1 date options here, week 2 date options here, with some of these dates bolded. So essentially what this is saying is you're going to need to pick for this week 1 section up here, 2 of these dates, and as long as one of them is bolded, you are good to go. So once I've determined that this is the accompanist position that I'm wanting to choose, in this instance, it's the only accompanist position that's open. So if I want to do this event, this is the accompanist position I would have to be available for. Once you've determined that this is the position you're picking, of course, you will fill out the tab down here. I'm going to do Joel this time, and also up here. And then I will fill out my rehearsal options. So maybe the 19th is a good day for me. And so since I've picked the 19th, that is a bolded date, so I can choose any of the remaining week 1 options for my second day because I've already covered the 1 bolded date per week requirement. So maybe this time I'll come in on the 17th as well. And then maybe for the second week, I want to come in on the 28th. And then because the 28th is not bolded and we need to pick at least one bold date a week, I need to pick either the 25th, the 26th, or the 27th. So I'll just pick the 25th. And again, once I have filled out my rehearsal schedule on the student information sheet, I will then go to the website and accept the event there as well. Okay, so that is your crash course on everything solo and ensemble. As I had mentioned at the beginning of the video, I just want to kind of go through the musician notes really quick just to demonstrate how it's a summary of everything that I just said. So see student spreadsheet to decide which accompanist position you would like. So that's right here, right? Any tab with accompanist listed as open is open. Look over the repertoire assigned, read the notes carefully on the bottom right of the page, that's the little note section in yellow, and fill in your preferred rehearsal schedule and add your name as the accompanist in those two places, down below on the tab and then up top. I think it's in column J. Be sure to accept the job here too on the website. Email Annie, that's me, with any questions, ahefley@trekorda.com. So if you have any confusion, any questions about anything that's listed on the spreadsheet or on the event, you can always email me to check on those. So yeah, that's everything that you need to know to accept solo and ensemble events with us. Now that you have all the information, I think once you do it yourself once, you'll kind of get the hang of it pretty quickly. And again, of course, you can contact me with any questions, and happy solo and ensemble season.